that have proven not to work, as is evidenced by the failed stimulus bill from 2 years ago. We can do better. We can do better by the American people, and we need to. But it's got to start here, and it can start by picking up things that we know have bipartisan support. Madam President, I yield the floor. Madam President, I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
closed. Oh, quorum.
I ask unanimous consent to call off the quorum call.
Without objection. Morning business is closed. Under the previous order, the Senate will resume consideration of the motion to proceed to S-1769, which the clerk will report.
Motion to proceed to the consideration of S-1769, a bill to put workers back on the job while rebuilding and modernizing America.
Senator from Michigan.
Madam President, the Rebuild America Jobs Act addresses two of our most fundamental responsibilities. First, the need to respond to the urgent jobs crisis. Secondly, the duty to create the physical framework for economic growth now and into the future. There should be no debate about our duty to fulfill those two responsibilities, and yet once again, we're in a situation where the refusal of our Republican colleagues to compromise, even on consideration of measures that they've supported in the past, prevents us from acting on behalf of the American people. I am encouraged by reports that perhaps finally the need to act has convinced some of our colleagues across the aisle to at least consider allowing the Senate to debate this legislation. I hope, for the sake of millions of people in Michigan and in every other state who are waiting for us to act, that at least some of our Republican colleagues will relent and allow us to at least debate this measure. Now, what would this bill accomplish? Simply put, it seeks to create jobs now and into the future. It does so by funding a wide array of infrastructure projects, including roads, bridges, rail transport, mass transit, airport facilities, and updated air traffic control systems. These projects would put construction workers on the job immediately. They would, according to estimates by Moody's, boost economic growth by more than $1.50 for every dollar that we spend, and the benefits would continue into the future as American companies and American workers benefit from the increased competitiveness that modernized infrastructure provides. In my home state of Michigan, this legislation would result in more than $900 million going to infrastructure projects. It would create about 12,000 jobs. Residents of my state are keenly aware of the need to act, and to act now, on the jobs crisis. And they are keenly aware of the terrible costs that we pay if we allow our economic competitors to establish advantages over our workers. In my state, nearly a third of our bridges are structurally deficient and functionally obsolete. More than a third of our major roads are in poor or mediocre condition. Only about 40% of our major urban roadways are congested. The people of Michigan want us to act on jobs. They want us to act now to maintain America's competitive edge. These are not controversial ideas. At least they have not been in the past. Support for infrastructure is traditionally bipartisan. It was a Republican president, Dwight Eisenhower, who launched the Interstate Highway System. This bill includes an infrastructure bank based on a bipartisan idea, one supported by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Every member of this body, Democrat and Republican, fights for adequate infrastructure spending for their state. Why then, faced with the dual challenges of a jobs crisis and increasingly outdated infrastructure, would we hamper our ability to grow now and in the future by not allowing a debate on this bill and adopting this bill? Now, perhaps some of my Republican colleagues object to the way this bill is paid for. As has been the case with previous jobs bills, this legislation would not add a dollar to the deficit. It would pay for these much-needed infrastructure efforts by asking those with incomes of more than $1 million a year to pay a fraction of a percentage point of their income above $1 million a year in additional taxes. Again, outside the halls of Congress, this is not a controversial notion. A strong majority of Americans, including a majority of rank-and-file Republicans, supports the idea of asking the wealthiest among us to contribute to solving our job crisis. And I may say, Madam President, that in terms of investing in infrastructure, a recent CNN poll shows that 72% of Americans support investing in infrastructure to create jobs. We know from this poll the huge majority of Americans want us to invest in infrastructure. They want us to invest in infrastructure now to create jobs, and that is mirrored by other polls which show that a vast majority of Americans believe that the fair way to pay for this investment is for the wealthiest among us to pay a small fraction of income that they make above a level such as $1 million, which is what is provided for in this bill. Now, make no mistake, if Republicans reject this legislation because of the funding mechanism, they are voting directly in opposition to the will of the American people and against the concepts of basic fairness that should guide our actions. And finally, relative to this pay-for, there is only one group of Americans that have done well financially in the last few decades, and that is the wealthiest 1%. The rest of Americans, middle-income Americans, have either lost ground or gotten nowhere. But the wealthiest 1% of Americans have done exceedingly well, and their proportion of the national income has grown dramatically. And so to say that income above $1 million should pay a small fraction of a percent in a surcharge to help pay for things that this country desperately needs and would create jobs flies right against the feelings and beliefs of the vast majority of the American people. Now, finally, the vote that we're going to take in the next couple days is not even a vote on the bill. This is a vote on ending a Republican filibuster of the motion to proceed to the bill. It's a motion which would allow us to begin to debate a bill. Now, I've been continually surprised, Madam President, at the lockstep opposition of Republicans to even beginning to debate on these matters. And I would make a simple request, and a number of us have done the same. Let's debate this legislation. Allow us to debate the legislation, and if the legislation can be improved, offer ideas to improve it. If there's a better idea, offer the better idea. I believe Republicans would have a very receptive audience if they propose ideas for which there is strong evidence of benefits in economic growth and job creation. But until we can get a job creation measure to the floor of the Senate, we can't even discuss those issues in a legislative setting. We can only really hear debate as to whether we ought to be allowed to debate those issues. A bipartisan vote to begin to debate on jobs legislation would send an important signal to the people we all represent, a signal that we are ready to put aside partisanship and address the problems which our people face. I hope that Republicans will end the filibuster so that we can adopt the motion to proceed to this jobs bill. And, Madam President, I yield the floor and note the absence of the quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Madam President, I rise today to address our nation's job crisis and to share some thoughts about why it's important that we proceed to debate on the Rebuild America Jobs Act. It may come as a surprise to some across the nation that at this point this chamber is not debating the Rebuild America Jobs Act, but that we're debating whether to debate it. Only in the Senate could we be engaged in that type of question when across America millions of folks want to see us act, want to see us create jobs. It was only a few weeks ago we had a similar debate, and that debate was over the America Jobs Act, a broad portfolio of measures to put our economy back on track and create jobs for Americans. And to get the closure on whether to debate, we had to get a supermajority under the rules of the Senate. And my colleagues across the aisle opposed that, and we could not get to the debate of the bill on how to create jobs. Now we have before us a smaller segment of that bill, one that focuses on the construction industry. And again, we find ourselves here debating whether to debate rather than getting down to work and creating jobs. So I hope this time the outcome will be quite different. The jobs crisis has hit hard across this nation, especially hard in my home state, in Oregon, where the job rate has been lower, that is, the unemployment has been higher than in most states across this nation. And one of the main reasons that Oregon is hurting is because our construction industry, our residential and commercial construction industry, is flat on its back. More than 40,000 construction jobs have been lost in Oregon since 2007, and thousands more have been lost in related industries like forest products and nursery stock and grass seed, all of which only thrive when we're building homes in America, and right now we are not building homes in America. So we need a boost to get the construction industry moving again. And if you don't believe me, just listen to the people in the state of Oregon. A few weeks ago, I asked my constituents to write in and share their stories, and today I'm going to share some of those stories with all of you. Caroline from Marion County writes in and says, I am a construction cost accountant with 47 years of experience and 2 master's degrees. I have been widowed since 1996. I am 69 years old. I fully support my 67-year-old sister, who has dementia and is in remission from colon cancer. Wall Street and my own bout with cancer just before I turned 65 has wiped out a lifetime of savings, my retirement nest egg. I have to work, or we will be homeless in about 3 months. I drive a 16-year-old vehicle that is on its last legs. I have aging parents who are struggling to keep their farm. Those are the facts. In late 2008, for the first time in my career, I was laid off from my construction accounting job. Since that time, I have been unable to find another job in my field despite my good references. Currently, I work part-time for a startup.com. My prognosis for continued employment is shaky. Banks won't loan money to a startup. This summer, I went from June 26th to September 7th without a paycheck of any kind. Last week, I applied for a job at Walmart for Oregon minimum wage. I'll probably get hired, but I'm not kidding myself about job security. That doesn't exist anymore for most of us. Senator, the worst thing about all of this is our do-nothing Congress. Washington, D.C. has lost touch with America. Her words ring powerfully in this chamber. She, like millions of other Americans, are saying that this economy is tough. Family circumstances are rough. And why doesn't Congress get down to work and debate and pass job-creating legislation? She's frustrated with this do-nothing Congress, and here we are debating whether to debate a jobs bill. I encourage my colleagues to listen to Carol Ann from Marion County. Let's get past this point and get down to debating the jobs bill. Hank from Marion County writes, 3 years ago, I was at the top of my more than 35-year career in construction management, working as a senior project manager on a large project. As the economy tanked, the projects were terminated, and today I'm unemployable. After hundreds of applications, I am left able, willing, and highly experienced, yet undesired. Our farm was foreclosed, and my wife and I had to file bankruptcy. Currently, our mortgage lender refuses to complete a home loan modification, although they qualified us 2 years ago for the program, and since then, we have been making the required payments each month, even without a final agreement. We have met with community groups, written letters, made calls, yet nothing seems to happen. In another year, when the bankruptcy period ends, we fear the bank will simply foreclose again, and we will lose our farm. Again, another voice from a family deeply affected by the collapse of the construction industry, and a call to us to help put it back on its feet. Brian from Yamhill County writes, I have worked in the lumber industry for 35 years. In 2009, I was laid off for 11 months. I did go back to work in June, only to be cut again after only 5 days of work. I went back to work in December for the same company. In September 2010, there was a cutback. More than 70 people lost their jobs. I was lucky. I made the cut, but my pay was reduced by nearly $5 an hour. I went from driving a forklift to a cleanup position. 6 months went by, and then another cut. This time, another 60 people lost their jobs. I was lucky again, and I worked in a new position for nearly a year until September 2011, and then came another cut. This time, I was one of 42 people to be laid off with no chance of callback. Now, there are rumors of the entire plant closing. I've been out of work for 1 month now. In my job search, I've been running into the same thing everywhere I go: no work available. Every industrial area I go into, I see many buildings where companies have gone out of business, windows and doors boarded up. I want Congress to do the job they are being paid to do so I can go back to work. And that's the line he closes on, that we here in this chamber should do the job we are assigned, that is to take on, amend, and pass job-creating legislation so he can find a job, so he can go back to work. And I think his sentiment is echoed by millions of American families. Now, there is no substitute for a job. No program can come anywhere close to the important role a job plays in the personal satisfaction and the structure it gives us in our life, and the knowledge that you're putting a roof over your family's head and you're putting food on the table. No program can suffice. A job is at the heart of the success of our families. And yet, here we are, fiddling while Rome burns, or in this case, filibustering while millions of Americans go without jobs. It's not right. So I say to my colleagues, particularly want to encourage my colleagues across the aisle who filibustered the last effort to put the jobs bill on the floor. Stop. Talk to the folks in your home state that are unemployed, who expect you to do what every American worker expects us to do, which is to debate and pass job-creating legislation. The bill on which we are debating whether to debate, the Rebuild American Jobs Act, is a common sense strategy to put people back to work in an industry that needs it, making investments that our country will have to make sooner or later anyway. 1 in 4 bridges in America is rated deficient. We get a D grade on our infrastructure from the American Society of Civil Engineers. This is not the America we know. It's not the America we want. Let's build the America that will have the infrastructure to drive our economy positively in the future. These infrastructures are not an option. They're a necessity. We can build them now when interest rates are low and jobs are desperately needed, or we can spend more later when they deteriorate further and when it's more expensive to do so. Earlier, creating jobs, lower interest rate, more cheaply, more cost-effective, more bang for the buck, or later, more expensive, more difficult, higher interest price tag. It doesn't seem like a difficult choice. It certainly doesn't seem like a difficult choice as to whether we should at least be on the bill debating it. Madam President, I know that many folks are coming to the floor of the chamber to address the question of how we get a jobs bill actually before this chamber. I hope that all of my colleagues will get on the line with folks back home, go to that town meeting and say, do you want us to debate a bill, or do you want me to keep stalling and preventing a debate on how to create jobs? I'm pretty confident that 9 out of 10 people in the room, and maybe 10 out of 10, are going to stand up and say, quit stalling. Let's get to work here so America can get back to work. Thank you, Madam President. President, I ask that unanimous consent that floor privileges be extended for the balance of the day to my intern, India Wade.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
All right. Well, Madam President, today I would like to discuss the jobs bill we're currently debating and how important it is that we pass this right away. I'd also like to respond to the minority leader's remarks this morning in which he tried to deny the bipartisan nature of this proposal and instead sought to divert this chamber towards a hodgepodge of bills taken up by the House. Madam President, all across the country and in our state of New York, from Poughkeepsie to Buffalo, there are roads, bridges, and sewer systems in need of serious repair. And in each of these places, there are thousands of middle-class families desperately looking for work. In the construction trades, the backbone of the middle class in many of our communities, in New York and around the country, there's 25, 30, 40% unemployment. And that's true for many of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. We all know that in previous recessions, 60% of the new jobs were in construction. That's because they'd lower interest rates and build more housing. Now, there's no more lower interest rates because when the recession began, they were already very low. And, of course, there's a surplus of housing right now in America. But this week, by voting to pass the Rebuild America Jobs Act, the Senate can get thousands of those Americans off the unemployment line and back into the workforce. And because they get paid good salaries, the money they get flows into the economy and creates a multiplier effect and creates other jobs. These are good, solid, high-skilled American jobs, jobs that we need. And investing in our roads, bridges, and sewer systems couldn't be more urgent. More than 1 in 4 of our nation's bridges are either structurally deficient or obsolete. I put out a list of those in New York State, and it was astounding in every part of our state. And we all know, as we get closer to winter, our deteriorating roads will place a heavy burden on commuters and on local taxpayers. Our local towns and villages and counties and cities, they can't afford the infrastructure work that's needed right now because of tight budgets and budget cutbacks at the federal, state, and local levels. And as this past weekend's storm made clear, investing in our crumbling sewer systems has never been more essential, as up and down the Northeast, old sewer systems give way to serious flooding. Now, we can make a down payment on these priorities by passing this bill, and we should do so in a bipartisan manner. When I travel across New York State, 2 of the first things people bring up to me are jobs and fixing our infrastructure. This bill does both. It doesn't matter whether the people are Democrat, Republican, Independent, upstate, downstate, men, women, liberal, conservative. They all say the same thing. And we see this reflected in public opinion. A recent CNN poll showed that nearly 3/4 of Americans support additional federal investments in our infrastructure. Yes, they're worried about the deficit and our long-term fiscal health, but they know we can't cut our seed corn, infrastructure projects that create jobs and help America grow economically. Here's the best part of this bill. It invests in projects that creates jobs, but it's fully paid for by asking the wealthiest among us, those who have incomes of over $1 million, to pay a fraction on more of their taxes. And they pay that not on their entire income, Madam President, but just on the part that's above $1 million. So if a millionaire, someone worth a lot of money, if somebody has an income of $1,100,000, they only pay this small 0.7% increase on the 100,000 that's over $1 million. Their first $1 million doesn't change. The tax policy doesn't change. Now, over the last decade, the middle class has taken a punch in the gut. The cost of sending kids to college has gone way up. The job market is tougher and tougher. Middle-class incomes are declining, while middle-class costs are rising. It is so hard as the family, the middle-class family, sits around the dinner table Friday night to figure out how to pay all those bills and provide a great life for the future and for the children. The very wealthy, the very, very wealthy, have done very well over the last decade. A lot of those wealthy people live in our state of New York. We say God bless them. They've started successful businesses, done well over the last decade. And so, to pay for this bill, we're just asking them to pay a sliver more, 0.7% more of each dollar. They earn over $1 million. And this one, they can't say, well, we're afraid the money will be wasted, because it goes to infrastructure, directly to infrastructure. And there is no, the way this is set up, there's no politics in the process. It's the most needed projects that work. Let me give you a fact, folks. Right now, I know many of my colleagues joined with me and Senator Brown, Senator Stabenow, Senator Casey in saying China's got to play fair, and we're all worried that China will get ahead of us economically. Well, right now, China's spending 4 times as much on infrastructure as the United States. 4 times as much. That's not 4 times per capita as much. That's 4 times as much. And here's the real kicker. According to a recent survey of 1,400 business leaders in 142 countries, the U.S. ranks number 24 in overall infrastructure quality. Is that a shame? We're behind countries like Barbados and Oman. We also rank number 20 in roads, behind the United Arab Emirates, Portugal, and Namibia, 22nd in ports, behind Malaysia, Bahrain, and Panama, and 31st in air transportation infrastructure, behind Chile, Thailand, Malaysia, and Malta. How can it be? These great United States, which we dearly love, which always was at the top in creating roads and bridges and tunnels and great water systems. The third water tunnel in New York is being built right now. It's an engineering wonder. It started in the 50s, the planning for it, I believe. And now we're number 31 in transportation, 22 in ports, 20 in roads. In these categories, behind countries like the United Arab Emirates, Portugal, Malaysia, Thailand, Chile. If that isn't a wake-up call, I don't know what is. We can't afford to let our global competitors get the edge. So this bill builds back infrastructure, creates good-paying jobs that will send a shot into the arm of an economy that desperately needs them, and pays for it only by taxing the income over $1 million of those who are very, very wealthy and have done very well in our society. How can you vote against something like this? Well, one would think maybe the only reason is because some people don't want the economy to grow and prosper. Hate to think that, but infrastructure has always been a bipartisan issue in this body, and it should continue to be. Now let me respond directly to the minority leader's comments this morning. He derided the proposal on the floor as something that had already been tried, something that had no chance of passing, and something that was not bipartisan. Well, first, already been tried? Oh, yeah. Is the minority leader saying because we built the Erie Canal or we built the highway system in the 1950s we shouldn't do any more infrastructure? Makes no sense. Makes no sense. And every study shows that the infrastructure part of the stimulus bill created lots of jobs and then left us with better infrastructure. Now then he said, as I mentioned, not just was it tried already, but it was not bipartisan. Well, we know that the need for infrastructure is a bipartisan economy. Because the minority leader may be imposing a top-down strategy that bars anyone on his side from voting for any proposal offered by the President to improve the economy, doesn't mean these proposals aren't bipartisan. Just yesterday, the former Republican senator from Ohio, a fiscal conservative, if there ever was one, Senator Voinovich, was quoted saying he believed the need to repair our roads and bridges was so great that he thought President Obama should be raising the gas tax to fund those investments. I don't know if I agree with him on that specific solution. But, Mr. President, isn't that remarkable? A Republican senator calling for revenue increases to pay for infrastructure investment. That's what we do in this bill, Madam President. And let me just say once again, he's not in the Senate right now, so he's free to pretty much do what he wants. I would hope other senators who are here in the Senate would join in that call, because I believe they know in their heart it's the right thing to do. The only difference between what we proposed and Senator Voinovich proposed is that instead of asking middle-class Americans to pay more at the pump, we ask those whose income is above $1 million to pay their fair share to help put construction workers back on the job. That seems like the right set of priorities to me. So the minority leader is clearly wrong when he says this concept isn't bipartisan. Another former senator, Chuck Hagel from Nebraska, has been a leader in calling for an infrastructure bank, which is in this bill. Senator Hagel sponsored one of the first pieces of legislation creating an infrastructure bank and has continued to call for it since leaving the Senate. So there are lots of Republicans out in the country who support this measure. The polling shows a large number of Republicans support the kind of proposal we have on the floor, building infrastructure and having those who make over $1 million pay for it so we don't increase the deficit. That is a bipartisan proposal. So, Mr. President, let's not hear from the minority leader or anybody else. Madam President, let's not hear from the minority leader or anybody else that the proposal on the floor isn't bipartisan. Just this morning, the top Republican on the Environment and Public Works Committee is quoted discussing the progress that he and the chairwoman of that committee are making on a 2-year surface transportation bill. This is great news. I'm glad to hear they're close to advancing that bill. But if you believe infrastructure is enough of a priority that you can support a long-term highway bill, why would you object to speeding up some of that investment now so that we can put more Americans to work quickly? Mr. President, Madam President, excuse me. Madam President, you're clearly Madam President. This bill is bipartisan for sure. The minority leader just has a political strategy to block all of our president's initiatives to improve the economy. Now, what has the minority leader called for instead? He's called for the Senate to take up a hodgepodge of bills sent over by House Republicans that, even when taken together, don't do enough to tackle the jobs problem. Who would believe that this hodgepodge of bills will do more for jobs than the traditional way we get out of recessions, infrastructure building? Most of the ideas cited by the minority leader have next to nothing to do with jobs at all. Many of these ideas belong more on a lobbyist's wish list rather than any serious jobs agenda. It's a stretch to call many of these bipartisan. Many of these bills are items that Republicans would be seeking to pass even if we were in a boom and had full employment. Many are just ideological priorities, dressed up as job solutions. It's laughable for the House leadership to act like these proposals would address the jobs crisis when they are sitting on real solutions like the China currency bill. I would say to the Speaker and Majority Leader over in the House, you want to do something about jobs and you're worried about two houses not working together? We had a large bipartisan majority, 65 votes, saying we're going to force China to play fair on currency. Their failure to do so causes millions of jobs, good manufacturing jobs primarily, not exclusively, to leave this country. There is nothing Congress can do more that would uplift our manufacturing sector than confront China's unfair trade practices. But Speaker Boehner, Majority Leader Cantor sit on that bill and now tell us to take up this little hodgepodge of items. Our bill passed, the China currency bill, with a bipartisan supermajority in the Senate. The House leadership continues to sit on the sidelines while China takes advantage of us, and the China currency bill is languishing in the House for no good reason. Speaker Boehner, heed the will of your chamber and put that bill on the floor. And the minority leader in the Senate would be well served to stop pretending that these pieces of the President's jobs bill are not bipartisan just because he is withholding his support in service to perhaps a strategy that outlines his #1 goal, the defeat of the President. It's time to stop the games and accomplish something that can make a real dent in the jobs crisis. I say to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, pass this bill, rebuild our ailing and aging infrastructure, create jobs, and make sure that what we do here does not reduce the deficit by having those whose income exceeds $1 million pay a small little increase to pay for it. I yield the floor.